Introducing Recyclico, making lithium-ion last forever. Recyclico's patented recycling process achieves up to 100% recovery of battery metals from lithium-ion batteries for electric vehicles, including cobalt, lithium, nickel, manganese, and aluminum. Recyclico Battery Materials Incorporated trades on the TSX Venture AMY, on the OTCQB AMYZF, and Frankfurt 2AM. For more information, visit recyclico.com or phone us at 778-574-4444. Recyclico, making lithium-ion last forever.
You're listening to HowStreet.com radio, available online at TalkDigitalNetwork.com. Welcome to HowStreet.com radio, the online source for market opinions. Here is Jim Goddard.
My guest is Mark Leibovit, editor and publisher of the Leibovit VR newsletters, also known as VRTrader.com. He's speaking to us from Arizona. Welcome back to the show, Mark.
Glad to be here. Thanks for having me.
Mark, do you have a special offer for our listeners?
Yes, we do, and we do it strictly for the How Street Radio folks. It is at VRTrader.com, which is the shortcut to get to Leibovit VR newsletters, VRTrader.com, and the promo code as you enter in the order form would be 2022 half off, and you get 50% off of any newsletter you sign up for any time frame you sign up for. So again, the promo code is 2022 half off, and I also want to make a disclosure that I'm not a financial advisor, nor do I provide financial advice, but the newsletter is educational, and we've done it, I think it's in our 43rd year.
Mark, a little disclaimer you'll always like to tell people before we get into it as well.
Yeah, I'm not a financial advisor, nor do I provide financial advice.
We call it education, and it's up to you to decide what to do with it.
Yeah, well, that's part of the disclaimer situation. We're not managing money for people, and we like talking about it a lot, though, and we do some really interesting reports that have given us accolades over the years, like I was named Timer Digest of the Year by Timer Digest magazine for a couple of years, and always somewhere near in that top 10 list, and, we're doing something right somewhere, but I'm primarily proud of the fact that we're survivors, that after all these years we're still here doing it and enjoying the horses come out of the gate every morning.
Mark, did you see any major reaction in the markets to the U.S. midterm election?
Well, I think the markets were disappointed. They were looking for a clean sweep. There was a lot of discussion, as you may have read, regarding a red takeover of both the House and the U.S. Senate. And apparently the House is going to be a majority now, but they're not really sure of the margin, and the Senate is sort of up in the air. So it wasn't as dramatic. There were some successes at some governor races in the U.S., but one of the reasons the stock market sold off, I think, last day was, I guess, partial disappointment over that result. Of course, there's the CPI, the Consumer Price Index, coming out, I believe, tomorrow. So that is, worrisome. If it's much higher, then that discourages the market that what the Fed is doing is not working, which I don't think is going to necessarily work anyway, but that's just my opinion. And if it's down, then I guess the market might rally despite the election, thinking, well, maybe they're having some effect and inflation's coming down, and the Fed may start to, reduce their aggressive posture somewhat in terms of incrementally raising interest rates. So they're excited about that possibility. So I guess a lot's going to depend on what happens tomorrow. But as I've stated in these interviews before now, I'm a bit of a bear overall. And as far as the interest rate scenario, I mean, his statement that he made in the last week or so was that his goal is to have what he calls positive real interest rates across the entire yield curve. So that may sound like Chinese a little bit, positive real interest rates across the entire yield curve. But what that means is that if your inflation is 8.2% and your Fed fund rate, so the rates that he's been raising incrementally is around 3.75% to 4%, you're going to have to catch up to that 8.2%. So he would, in theory, would have to jack rates up until it got to 8%, just to provide what they call this positive rates across the yield curve. So he wants everything uniform. So if the CPI starts dropping, then there's less distance he has to cover. If it's going up, it's more distance. And we don't know how successful they're going to be anyway, because we've talked about this numerous times on this show. We can make a list a mile long about things that they have no control over. So, unemployment and supply chains and geo-cosmic issues and geopolitical issues and, crop shortages and all kinds of, fun stuff out there, willingness of people to work or not work, so it's real interesting. So tomorrow should be an interesting day in the markets. Maybe it'll be a positive one if that CPI sort of fits everybody's goal. But I'm more in the camp. I just came from a lecture here I shouldn't say a lecture. I was on a panel on real estate that they invited me into here in the Scottsdale, Arizona area. It was organized by this group called IMN, and they do a lot of, various educational workshops and seminars, and this one was focusing on, real estate, multifamily real estate actually, and they had me on a panel asking what I thought about interest rates were going to do. So I pretty much just repeated what I just told you, but I kept reminding them that I was, alive and well and in business back in 1980 when interest rates were sky high, when Paul Volcker at the Fed was in charge, and I remember buying a house and financing it at 11% interest, because real interest rates at the banks, I think, were 16 or 17% at the time, and I was getting a deal because I negotiated directly with the seller of the property, and I was really happy I got 11%. So, people complaining that rates have dropped, not dropped, they've increased from 3% to roughly up to about 7% now, but I remember when it was, much higher, and frankly, that possibility still exists, that we could repeat the 1980 phenomenon. So and I'm not saying it's happening in 2 weeks. It could happen over the course of a year or more. So, but that's sort of what everybody's talking about. And of course, there's all continued talk about what's going on in Europe. And apparently, the news reported that Putin had some setback in the last couple of days, and they're sort of excited about that. But I don't necessarily believe all the news, and I'm more in the camp that things could get worse over there on the war front than better, but let's see what happens there. And that's all going to affect the inflation, and our ability to control it could be significantly reduced if that is indeed escalating, not de-escalating, as we were reported, at least by some news organizations today. So I hope I addressed your question.
Mm-hmm. Now, cryptocurrency, some people are saying it's a crisis. Bitcoin losing about $3,000 today. What's your opinion about what's happening with cryptos?
Well, there's a lot of financial scandals going on. Those that financed companies, and they got into cash crunches. And there's, I don't have all the details in terms of all the names of the participants, but there was, one that stories came out, I think earlier today about, just, I guess, bankruptcy, essentially, and the collapse of companies that have, been executing these trades or funding these various cryptos. So, the bottom line for me is, you got to wait till there's a turn. We've had a little bit of a bear market, just like in the cannabis stocks. You've had a bear market for the last year and a half or 2 years. In the crypto space, we've been going down. And, we've already learned there are these multi-year cycles in the cryptos from way back in 2008 and 9 when the whole thing started. So we're in a big, correction. And what happens, when asset prices come down, the companies that are involved or the brokerage firms that are associated with it or the participants, as the prices come down, their balance sheets deteriorate and their obligations can't be met, and, things, can pyramid on each other, particularly if they're holding big positions in the cryptos and they have to unload them. So, we just saw like Dogecoin, Doggy Coin as I call it, that's Elon Musk, favorite coin or one of his favorite coins, run up right after he took over the Twitter asset the last couple of weeks, and went up from like 5 cents up to 16 cents, and had like a 300% move to the upside. Now it's come back; it's already back to 8 cents again. I guess in sympathy with what's going on with Ethereum and with Bitcoin. So the bottom line is, it's part of the bear market that we've been in, and we don't know when it's over. And we've seen extreme moves. What did Bitcoin do in the last bear cycle? It was like 22,000, and it dropped to like 2,500 or $3,500, and then it ran up to $60,000. But it took 2-3 years for that scenario to unfold, so we could be in that same scenario. And part of me, I love when they kill stuff, because that provides bargains and opportunities for you. So when they take big stocks down. Like for example, they took Disney down. They took that to the woodshed today. Apparently related to the Florida victory over woke stuff. Governor DeSantis was successful in chastising Disney about that, and the fact that they get such overwhelming political support in Florida, pretty much seals the doom for Disney at Disney World with their woke nonsense, and maybe for Hollywood and the rest of the country as well. But that was a result of the bad news hitting them and the implications of that. Well, in the crypto space, we've got a bear cycle, a lot of negative opportunities, action unfolded, and I look at it like the reason I brought up the Disney was, when they kill them like that, my antennas start to stick up and say, well, it's still a company, they still make money, maybe they won't continue with their woke analysis, but the stock is a company, is a money maker and has a long history of success. So when they take, I think it was down like 13-14% in one day for a blue chip company for that, that's pretty extraordinary. And I'm not saying the bottom was today in that, but by the same token, when they kill Ethereum and Bitcoin and Dogecoin and everything else, you look at your charts, it's like the opposite of a parabolic advance, where it goes straight up on the chart to the right side. Well, this is a collapse, and when it does that, it usually provides an opportunity. So in both instances, they become attractive, and I'm watching them carefully for a buying opportunity, because the markets tend to overdo things, and I'm not recommending them today per se, but it's on our watch list because of that negative price action. It's a bargain basement opportunity. You want to buy low and sell high, Jim, as they always say, right?
Except people only talk about it when it's high.
They don't want to talk. Yeah, they don't want to jump in when it's down, and that's been sort of my trigger over the years when I actually murder a stock, like they did with Walmart a couple months, 3 months back. On the poor forecast, and the stock went way down, toward $100 a share. Now it's back up to about 130, 140. And it was all on bad news. So, bad news in the crypto space, bad news for Disney. I mean, these are all things that investors or amateurs or professionals should pay attention to, because this is just what market fluctuations are, and you get extreme moves, and you got to look at them as, hey, this is like I said, your antenna should go up and say, well, they're throwing the baby with the bathwater out, and maybe there's an opportunity here. So you got to use your own criteria. You have to have your own financial management, how you handle a situation like that. But I don't think Bitcoin is going to disappear and go to zero. I don't think Disney is going to zero. So at some point between zero and here, since they're already down, there's a hell of a buying opportunity. And that's one of the reasons, you employ, or I employ, technical analysis, because you can look at a chart and get a good sense of when there's a selling climax, or whether it's so oversold that it's due for a buy. And there's a lot of hocus pocus us technicians use, to try to come up with some answer to that question. So, a lot of interesting things going on. I love when there's volatility like this in the markets.
Mark, I love your optimism. I think when they throw the baby out with the bathwater, you still think, well, I still have the bathtub. What can I do with that?
Right. Right. I can't tell you, over the years, and I've been doing this a long time, when they murder stuff, and you have the courage to just look at the charts and get a sense of where it's at, where it's been, and where it's at now. And, you know, like I say, there's a little hocus pocus involved with it, you know, usual chart patterns, and there's all these formations that you learn in technical analysis, like is it a double bottom formation, or is it a inverse head and shoulders formation, or is volume declining as it's going down? And, you know, we can spend an hour just discussing all these little things when you look at a chart to try to read what a stock is doing, and forecasting it as well. I mean, when it, you know, before it even comes down, there's signs that it could come down. But, you know, you put all that together, and it presents some real opportunities over the years. So most people get all excited when stocks break out to the upside, and they're running and running. And I generally don't like chasing stuff, though there is a whole methodology that says you can chase them on a breakout, and they'll go even higher, and you can chase them even more, and they'll go a little higher, and at some point they'll top out, and hopefully you don't get caught, and you can make it on the breakouts, and that is a valid strategy for a lot of people. My favorite approach is, you know, wait for the big corrections and stuff, like a Walmart or a Disney or a Bitcoin, or we can cite, you know, tons of examples, and start waiting for some signs that it's bottoming, and take advantage of the sell-off.
We'll have more with Mark Leibovit right after this.
Don't miss out. Stay informed. Receive the HowStreet.com weekly recap with thought-provoking podcasts, radio, and articles delivered to your inbox. Sign up for the HowStreet.com weekly recap on our homepage at HowStreet.com.
Welcome back. We're speaking with Mark Leibovit. Mark, do you think we're going into a cycle where gold juniors, gold miners could be attractive again?
I do. I don't have full confirmation of it, though we're starting to do a little nibbling here. I think we're still a little early. A lot of it is, you know, tied to the U.S. dollar and what that's going to be doing. You know, right now it's still overall strong, though it's gone through a little bit of a correction in the last couple of weeks, and that sort of encouraged some buyers in that space. Copper as well, gold, silver, platinum has actually been pretty strong. So, yes, but I hate to be fighting a strong dollar. Now the dollar is like in a little bit of a downtrend overall from where it was a couple of weeks ago. And if we get some further confirmation that really has made an intermediate top, that should be positive for, you know, gold and silver. So on the basis that it looked like it was a little downtrend, we took a little position in the silver area and a little bit in the gold area. We sort of stuck our toe in the water. So I'm more optimistic than I've been, but I can't say for sure that I could confirm a big bottom. That, you know, this is the big bottom, and it's going to run back to 2,070 an ounce, the big high, and, you know, blast off from there. I think ultimately it's going to be 3,000 or higher. So anyway, just got to, you know, I guess dollar cost average. You know, you do a little nibbling and go from there. So yeah, I'm reasonably positive, but not super positive on it. But the dollar is something you really got to watch, and that's really the key. And of course, you know, I'm still in that camp. When I bring this up to a lot of people, they think I'm crazy, but, you know, I just think that there's been government suppression in the gold market for decades, and I'm relying on research from others who have done a lot of work in this area, in particular an organization that I mentioned before called GATA, .org, and Bill Murphy, and they got 20 years of, you know, all kinds of empirical data and research regarding the government's involvement in suppressing the price, keeping it from going up, because if it goes up, it makes the government look bad. So there's a lot of, you know, shenanigans going on. There's some J.P. Morgan traders that, you know, got into trouble, and J.P. Morgan was fined for apparently manipulating or playing with the silver market. So the thought was that, you know, they're government-backed in their activity, and it wasn't just, you know, arbitrarily a couple guys playing around. So that's sort of the other side of the coin. You know, is there government suppression of the market, keeping it from where it should be? And does that also play into the strength or weakness in the dollar? So there's a lot of variables here. So you got to sort of go put all the pieces together. The dollar starts turning south, and the charts look like they're turning up. Then I guess you got to put the government suppression scenario on the side a little bit and try to trade it and see how far it goes.
China's economy, is that a concern to you?
Well, only to the extent, from what I read, you know, that they when they lock down and goods and services aren't produced, and that could affect us here in the West, I suppose so. Yeah. So where are we there? They locked themselves down, and now here they're unlocking themselves a little bit. So I guess that's more positive, negative. Of course, the whole other aspect is whether there's going to be a military conflict at some point because of Taiwan. So it's plus they've aligned themselves with Putin, and there's a lot of variables here on the table, and where do they stand relative to Iran? And it's tough, but in terms of the pure economic business aspects of it, opening up them, away from the COVID shutdown scenario should help the supply chain issue, which has been, as you know, plaguing just about everybody.
On the geo-cosmic front, anything we should be keeping a close eye on right now?
Well, I don't have all the details, but I got a text, I think it was yesterday, and Marco Rubio, who's one of the U.S. senators who just, by the way, got reelected last night in the Florida election process. So he is a U.S. senator, and he came out with a whole article about his interest and willingness and concern about the cover-up on the UFO front, which, as you know, is one of my favorite topics. So I thought that was sort of interesting that he, stuck his neck out a little bit, because it seems like everybody who does that, they seem to intentionally or otherwise lose credibility because they bring up a subject, even though the government itself says that, we were concerned and the national security is at stake. And so this just came out the last couple of days in an article, and I didn't go through all the details of it, but my opinion is, we can spend a long time on the subject, is that very little information is released. Apparently Ronald Reagan was given some briefing from his CIA director at the time regarding the existence of the UFOs and aliens and all that cool stuff, and we don't seem to hear too much about it. I know Bill Clinton was pounding the table of trying to find out, and he never found out anything. Lawrence Rockefeller was behind the Clintons trying to get more information released before Obama left the White House. He signed some executive order, and a lot of freedom of information stuff was released regarding, what the government knows about UFOs and so forth. So this Marco Rubio story came out the last couple of days. I mean, my basic thinking is, we don't have much time on this recording, but Harry Truman, before he left office, created this entity called the Majestic 12, which is, top people in the government, CIA people, military people, and they were basically created following the Roswell incident in 1947 to supervise and keep all this under surveillance and secrecy, and it has worked for many years. So you got to get to find out who is at the Majestic 12. I think they changed the name of that group, and who's in charge there, and whether you can ever get any information since it's so closely guarded. I don't know whether Rubio could do it because so many other senators and people have tried and they've been unsuccessful. So it's like talking about the gold suppression story we just touched on a few moments ago. I mean, it's stuff that, you have evidence, anecdotal and otherwise, but you can never really get to the bottom line and actually point fingers at an individual and confirm 100% that it's happening, though all the arrows are pointing in that direction. So more power to Marco Rubio, but I think, the group that's in charge of this whole thing, and it's been around since Harry Truman, and of course I'm sure new people have taken over since it's been so many years, new appointees, they've got it under lock and key. And I don't know any senator or any president can get to the very bottom line of it, though as I heard, Reagan was given a briefing, and there's some reports that he found out more than others did, and why he did versus others I can't explain. But apparently the program that he created for this is his version of the space program versus the Donald Trump version of the space program was a result of the information he was provided regarding extraterrestrial and UFO presence on Earth. So really interesting stuff. And when I watched the election and the results and all the fun stuff politically that's going on, and some of it just is real and not real, because some of these elections could be manipulated and played with. We already learned that there was some of that shenanigans going on in previous elections, and I say to myself, is all this that important? If my understanding of the Majestic 12 and what Harry Truman did and all this other stuff really true? And if that's really true, none of these other stories, including who is even the President of the United States, or who's the Premier in Canada, or Prime Minister in Canada, or anywhere else, does any of this really matter when something like this could really be true, that the government has covered up something as significant as that, considering all the technology and benefits to mankind that could be accrued from that type of information and technology? And the answer, of course, it would be, and none of these other things really matter. So, it's a power play, Jim. Whole group, they want to control the information and power and technology, and it's unfortunate. And I'm saying it for the third time, I wish Marco Rubio a lot of luck, but I don't think he's going to get to the bottom of it. But anyway, that was something interesting that came up the last couple of days to close this broadcast that I always find fascinating, because we know the government is very secretive and they do cover up a lot of information. So it only makes sense that it probably is true.
Well, sure, all the high-powered politicians, if the aliens came in to run everything, what would they do for work? Because most of them don't know how to work a real job.
Yeah, listen, if one of the aliens want to hire me, I'll be happy to do it.
Mark, thank you so much for chatting with us.
Having fun. Thank you so much for interviewing me. Talk to you next week.
My guest has been Mark Leibovit, editor and publisher of the Leibovit VR newsletters, also known as vrtrader.com. If you have any questions for Mark or any of our other guests, you can send them to info@howstreet.com. We'll ask that question for you. Our YouTube channel is Talk Digital Network. Find us on Twitter @HowStreet. We're also on Facebook. I'm Jim Goddard. Thank you for listening.
Comments made on HowStreet.com radio are an expression of opinion only and should not be construed in any matter whatsoever as recommendations to buy or sell any financial instrument at any time. Available online at TalkDigitalNetwork.com. HowStreet.com radio is a production of HowStreet Media Incorporated.